Hey guys, today we're going to do some work with radicals, um, which is a really important part of math and it confuses some people. We'll just start with some basic simplifying of radicals. This is from page 88. Let's simplify radical 96. And to simplify a radical, you don't just simply type it in a calculator and write down this decimal. To simplify a radical, you want to rewrite the radical so that the number under the radical is a perfect square. Like if it said radical 100, that would be great because that's simply 10. Radical 96 though is like 9 point something, which is messy. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our perfect squares. Here's the first 5 of them, and to get a list, if you wanted to, I suppose, you could type into the y equals part of your calculator x squared, and if you start at 1, these are the perfect squares in this second column, just to give yourself a visual. You want to find a number on that list that divides evenly into 96. So use your calculator a little bit and investigate. And if you think about it, 16 times 6 is 96. So we're going to rewrite radical 96 as radical 16 times radical 6. The square root of 16 is nice. That's why we chose it. It was on this list. So radical 16 is 4. Radical 6 is messy. So you just leave it. So 4 radical 6 is considered radical 96 simplified. Now number 7 is very similar. It just has a negative out in front, but just you could ignore it. Just copy it over again. 175. What number on this list goes into 175? 25 does. 25 times 7 is 175. Radical 25 is 5. Radical 7 is messy, so you leave it. By the way, if you happen to find a number that goes into it that's not the biggest number, it's not a big deal. You just have to keep simplifying. So if I go back for a moment to number 3, where the answer was 4 radical 6, what if I didn't find 16? What if I chose 4? 4 does go into 96. It goes into it, let's think about this, 24 times. What I would have to do is simplify the radical 4, and then I would have to simplify radical 24, which is radical 4 times radical 6. Radical 4 is 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 radical 6 is again our final answer. Let's do one more. Let's do a fraction. 5 over 64. So whenever you have a fraction under a radical, you split up the radical. I'm going to give radical 5 a radical, and 64 a radical. Radical 5 doesn't simplify. Radical 64 is 8. We're done. The last part of today's lesson is over on page 52. And these are radical equations. So the first set of directions was to simplify. This is to solve for x. So we're going to start with number 58. Number 58 says you have 3 radical x plus 8 minus 6 equals 4. So to solve for x, we want to first, I'll put some steps over here, isolate the radical. So to do that, we're going to add 6 to both sides in this question. And then undo this multiplication by division by 3. Isolate the radical means that the radical should be the only thing on one side of the equal sign. So we have 10 thirds, which I know is not very nice, but we have to deal with it. Next, after the radical is all by itself, you want to square both sides. Squaring will cancel out the radicals. Squaring and square rooting are opposites. So you're left with x plus 8. And 10/3 times 10/3 is 100 over 9. And then the final step would be to subtract 8 from both sides. So 100 over 9 minus 8, which is over 1, we would want the denominator of 8 over 1 to be 9. So we're really doing 100 ninths minus 8 times 9, which is 72 ninths. That's 28 ninths. And the last problem, sometimes you have more than one radical in an equation, like number 65. Number 65 has radical 5x plus 10 equal to radical x minus 6. And you can't, well, let me say it like this. Both radicals are already isolated. They're on separate sides. So you just simply square both sides, and then you could solve. Subtract x, subtract 10, and then divide by 4. And one thing I neglected to mention, which is very important, is you need to check your answer, because sometimes the solutions can be found by perfectly correct math just do not work. So if I plug in -4, 5 times -4 is -20, plus 10 is actually -10. So you can't have a negative under a radical. So in this question, there's actually no solution. Let's go back to the last one and see if that answer worked. I should have checked that. 28 ninths. 28 ninths plus 8 times 3 minus 6 is at 4. Well, 28 ninths plus 8, let's see what that is. So again, this is 9 ninths. So 28 plus 72 over 9, 100 ninths square rooted would be 10/3 times 3 is 10 minus 6 is 4. So it does work. So let me know if you have any questions, and have a great day.